After approximately 9,400 kilograms of biological matter was required to be disposed of from within ASF-03 and ASF-04, it was determined that the current supply levels for both sites was insufficient to handle the populations of SCP-4518 being contained there. As a result, supplies to both storage facilities have been doubled. The biological matter was deemed safe to be incinerated. It is expected that some, albeit significantly smaller amounts of it, will continue to be produced from both sites, and as a result, a schedule to allow for monthly incinerations of this material will be set up. Incineration is to be done at a minimum temperature of 1500 degrees Celsius for at least 4 hours, with the ashes that remain being passed through a grinder to ensure none of the remains are identifiable. It's October, and it's Sunday, and it's not Friday, and I apologize for that. I mean, I don't apologize that it's not, well, I guess I apologize that it's not Friday. If I had a say in the matter, I would do something about it, certainly. Anyway, SCP Cafe Recap, this is 2019, week 40. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, dog petter, clone aficionado, Tottenham Hotspur supporter, Amazon Web Services certified solutions architect. The wiki has a seminar coming up here in about 6 days. This coming Saturday, October 12th, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. How to Heckin' Read Critically, hosted by SCP Wiki Administrator Solus Singularity. Should be pretty good. Solus is very good at looking at these ideas and asking great questions to really make you consider the sort of thing that you're trying to put out there with your story. So that should be really, really good. Do try to attend that. That will be in the workshop channel on SynIRC. I feel like, and I don't have any inside baseball here to share with you, but I really feel like we've got to be getting close to the announcement for the 5,000 contest. We're down into the low triple digits of open slots left, and while I don't have anything to share yet, I would be surprised if that was the case over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I feel like it's got to be coming, and we're all just kind of waiting to see what that team's come up with for a topic, and that's going to be exciting times. But I don't have anything yet, but it's coming. You know it's coming. I know it's coming. What else have we got? I don't think we have a whole lot else to talk about going into week 40. It was an odd sort of week. We had, I think it was 10 was the number in scope. It was originally 11, and I did my reading of one of them, and I went to check the comments, and it was deleted in between the time I'd picked it up and the time I went to the comments. So we got 10, and I have 5 to talk about this week, and we may as well get started, right? SCP-4382, titled Entropic of Hulwick by T. Rutherford, who has been staying on their tradition of posting something every month on or around the 1st. That's fine. That's their prerogative. We have an object class of Euclid and an image that appears to be an aerial shot from about 5,000 feet off the ground of, it's an outdoor shot overlooking some rolling hills, and there's a strange visual effect going on in this. There's what we can see is like a semicircle that looks like it might go up into the air about at our level, so about 5,000 feet up, covering a good portion of this little valley, where the colors within it are a great deal more saturated than the colors on the outside of it. The greens are greener, the reds are redder, and so on. The caption to this indicates that this is SCP-4382, image taken from aerial drone. So that's something like right off the bat we have to go like, okay, so what exactly are we, how does the one lead to the other? Our procedures are quite interesting, and they sort of also lead you along those lines where you've got to wonder where we're going with all of this. They state that all satellite and flyover data of 4382's affected region must be actively censored. Blockades and checkpoints have been constructed along all roads leading to the skip, and Outpost 4382 will continue to monitor its rate of expansion. All personnel assigned to it must work in paired teams. Partners should be chosen with strong pre-existing relationships. If any member of staff begins to exhibit, quote, looping behaviors, contact the Outpost 4382 medical team immediately, and then employ the following measures. Speak their name loudly and clearly, use varying titles and nicknames, use light physical contact, such as shaking the shoulders or jostling, make sudden loud noises, such as clapping, snapping, or shouting, and elaborate on a shared experience or planned event and focus on key sensory details. And that wraps up our procedures. So looping behaviors, and we have to take some measures to try and, it appears, break the loop. That is a fairly pivotal concept of this whole work. The skip is described as the town of Hulwick, Kentucky, USA, and this sure does look like something you might see, this image, something you might see in central or east Kentucky or rolling hills. Nothing you would consider like real mountainous, unless you lived there your whole life and don't know any better. Within it, so it says, viewed from the exterior, this reality-altering anomaly that the town is encased in affects 8.7 square kilometers and is expanding outward in a spherical radius at half a meter squared per month. I don't know if that's quite the right units here, if we should be using either cubic kilometers or we're measuring area rather than a spherical radius at half a square meter per month of expansion. Either one is fine. I don't think that's a big knock against this. It's tricky stuff to navigate. So when viewed from the exterior, this sphere produces a mild visual distortion, and staff have described this phenomenon as like the skin of a giant soap bubble. So sure, looking back up at this image, I could see that it's got sort of a bluish tint to it on the outside where it looks like it would just be exposed to air. So yeah, I'd say that's fairly accurate based on what we're seeing here. So then we get into the gimmick here. All objects, animals, and people inside the town of Hulwick will continuously perform a single pattern of actions ad infinitum and with total disregard for any physical laws. It's an interesting choice of tense here that we're using the future for this. And it goes on to say this effect is poorly documented as the area of 4382 causes severe aliasing and static interruption in all forms of visual data. Audio transmissions appear unaffected, and on May 18th, 2019, MTF Xi 5 Newton's bullies were dispatched to investigate this anomaly and determine its source. So we talk about aliasing and static interruption. Aliasing is definitely a digital sort of problem to have, that aliasing like, oh, this pixel's similar enough to this pixel, I'm just going to alias this to that. You could theoretically get around that with analog gear, film photography, film video, which I assume the Foundation still has access to. Truth be told, including this visual that it's hard to visually document, I don't think actually buys us much in the context of this skip. The exploration logs are done well enough that it doesn't really affect the story, and it feels more like we're just looking for an excuse as to why this isn't a video log. Even though with, fairly minor adjustments to this log, it could just as easily be a video log, and we don't have to deal with trying to explain another strange part of this phenomenon. So we go straight into 3 exploration logs. Altogether, they're quite lengthy. They make up the rest of the skip minus a footnote block, and they're all from the same day. And this would put it into long boy territory. We're going to hit the high notes here and try and summarize what we're dealing with. This is one, the dialogue is really, really good. I do always suggest reading these pieces. SCP-4382. We're going to we're not quite summarized. We're gonna get into this a little bit, but we might skip a little bit here and there. So this first log introduces us to the 4 members of Xi-5 that are on this mission in contact with Site 9. They have some equipment on board with them. Cant counters, the standard Hume counter, Sanford clock. So each of these have footnotes. The Sanford clock is described as an atomic clock with 2 faces. One reads the surrounding electron transition frequency, and one reads from an internal miniature pocket of reality-anchored space, and this is used to detect temporal anomalies. And the last thing in here is Live Lights, which is footnoted as a portable radioscopic device for quickly picture mapping the internal structure of living creatures. This is used to detect internal abnormalities. So I like that. Here's 2 things I like about this. One, we are explaining some things that an MTF that is explicitly tasked with dealing with anomalous zones in odd dimensional spaces that deviate from our baseline of our understanding of physics and reality. And we have these tools of the trade that they use, and then we don't actually, these are not totally relevant to the plot. We're just sort of fleshing out a little bit. We're giving people some equipment that they might want to use in their own pieces down the road. The balance there is, you say, is this like Chekhov's gun? We're showing the people all this neat tech that they're supposed to get an idea of what it does, and then we don't use it. Are we taking up too much of the reader's time that way? And I don't think so. I think the way this is presented is fine. We're fleshing them out a little bit, and we're leaving that open potentially for other writers to make use of these ideas. So they enter the bubble, and immediately the sun changes position. They note they're already seeing some deviation on their Hume counter, and after this you start to see them intentionally saying and doing things to not cause a loop of their own. So as they continue in, they observe a squirrel. They note a red squirrel hanging on standing on a branch, and would swear he's been chewing on the same acorn for the last 20 seconds. One of them goes to approach. Site 9 says, "Use caution," to which they reply, "It's a friggin' squirrel." And so they approach. Says, "I'm nearly touching the thing. The acorn, whoa, freaky." So the squirrel's eating it in that typical turn and bite way, but the previous bites are growing back at an equal pace. It's like an endless acorn. I wonder what. And apparently they sort of flicked the squirrel to see what it would do, and it drops dead. Dropped right out of the tree. And now we observe that one of the Xi-5 members, 2, is perhaps caught in a loop. He's crouched down by a fern. A drop of water is falling from one of the leaves, but before it reaches the ground, it reappears on the leaf. It just forms, rolls, and drops. Forms, rolls, and drops. Forms, rolls, drops. And this person observing this just about got caught in a loop of their own. So this is really fascinating to me. They did a great job here in sort of, they don't go out of the way to explain to you why this is such a bad thing, but you can observe just this sudden deviation in behaviors of them being caught in this loop, and how scary that would be for these MTF members. So Xi-5 2 kind of snaps out of it, and we go into the second log where they are starting to observe the people of Hulwick, Kentucky, and it looks as though they were setting up for the Harvest Festival, and it looks like they've been doing that for the last 8 months nonstop. You can see, for example, there's a woman in a blue dress. She's climbing a ladder and tying off one end of a banner, Hulwick Harvest Festival. It says she climbs down, moves the ladder across the street. Just as she finishes tying the other side, the first knot unravels and the banner falls. So she goes back across the street to string it up again, only now the other side falls. This has happened 18 times just while Xi-5 1 is observing, and it's the same story everywhere that they look. And Site 9 reminds them not to observe any single temporal loop for too long, lest they also become looped. And 1 says, "I don't think this is temporal. I'm not seeing any sudden cuts or speed deviations, and my Sanford is ticking on normally. Cant counter is nearing a hard 8, though. I honestly think this might just be a wildcat." And we have a footnote here. And I like this, that we're sort of attaching more common names to things that an experienced team might see out in the field. So a wildcat is defined in the footnote as an object or region defying one or more core scientific laws. We could probably say yes, that does appear to be going on. And Site 9 asks, without a deviant temporal frequency? So this is something they've seen a lot, and I appreciate fleshing it out in this way that, everybody is aware of the situation and has seen this before. I like having a more competent foundation in a log like this. Xi5 observes that the Hume counter is peaking. It's getting more, the scale's going up as it goes toward the radial center of this soap bubble that they find themselves in, which is, convenient, and you would probably expect that of it. And one of the other members notes that they've observed a protracted loop going for 6 minutes, and that's apparently quite a thing. And they ask for a report, and they explain that it's a kid on his bike. He's wobbling as he rides, probably because of a big fucking shoulder bag that he's got. He's riding along, and for a split second looks away from the sidewalk to readjust his bag, and a group of boys comes out of an alley, and they collide. One of the boys is knocked to the ground. The kid falls off the bike, and a bunch of books fall out of his bag. The boys help their friend up, and then they start shouting at the bike kid. He collects his books. One of the boys kicks a big red hardcover book off the sidewalk. It falls open page on a sewer grate covered in wet clumps of leaves. The boys laugh and walk on. The kid is trying to dry the book off with his sleeve. He's crying, gets back on his bike and wobbles a bit before taking off. And he goes around the block, and the alleyway boys keep doubling back as well, and they keep, and this keeps occurring. And Xi5-1 notes they're seeing all sorts of little things along the same lines. They're all little causal loops. They're not necessarily temporal loops, but they're causal loops. And at this point, 4 has gone kind of quiet. She was the one that observed this this long loop and is thinking about what a hell it would be. 8 months living through that moment again and again. And at this point, everybody's getting a little concerned that she might be looping, and explaining it's knowing that it keeps happening over and over. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just like when I was a kid. I'd get to homeroom, sit at my desk, then Pavo's there pulling on my hair. He'd always do it so quick. The teachers never believe me. Every day I just wake up, go to class, and there's Pavo pulling my hair. Every day I just wake up, go to class. Oh shit. Xi5-4 is looping, and Site 9 says dispatch is on the way. It's going to take time. We need you guys to keep moving to the epicenter. And 3 says, what? Command, we're not leaving her here. Site 9 says the longer you're inside, the higher risk we run for 3. I'm sorry. That we might need a comma there, because I think that was supposed to be a response to Xi5-3. But the way that this reads, it could be read as the higher risk we run towards Xi5-3, and I don't think that's what was intended. But Site 9 instructs them to activate 4's beacon and move on, and they protest and are countermanded. That's an order. Xi5-4 is still looping as we end the second log, and we go into the third. So we go into this third log, and we have 2 Xi5 members left. 2 of them have been extracted or left to be extracted by Site 9's dispatch teams. So you've got Xi5-1 and Xi5-3 as they are approaching the epicenter of all this. 1 notes that it's getting harder to focus. The loops are all shorter. 3 chimes in and says, there's an elderly woman. I can see her through the garden window. She's making soup. She's just chopping the same carrot over and over. Little tight rows. Perfect straight cuts, the same carrot over and over. Little tight rows, perfect straight cuts, the same carrot over. And 5-3, focus up. Hey, listen to me. And still looping. Not again, damn it. Chile, come on, Banks, think. After this, you're going on vacation, remember? Chile, the salt flats, the desert after the rain, and this work. She snaps out of it. The desert after the rain, like one big mirror, so I'm standing in the stars. Captain? There you go, good. Command, be advised, 5-3 is returning to base, and they get into a little altercation, and 3 says, no, I'm fine. And we got a little dissension in the ranks here. Site 9 notes, Xi5, this is command. We're making the call. You move forward. 5-3's right. We need you in pairs. So they're both heading in. The can't counter at this point is in the red. Past the red, even. So I think we're here. It looks like an old farmhouse, except there's no farm out here, just an empty lot and a big house. Address is 13 Chadwick. Site 9 looks it up. Says this property belongs to Dennis and Margaret MacArthur. Nothing on file for either of them. Is the source inside the house? You can hear them walking. 3 says negative. Command, Can has a slight drop-off at the house, actually. I'm looking into the windows and... Oh, Christ. So, command, we got 2 corpses here. They're just laid out on the living room. Lots of stab wounds. Oh, God. Command, scratch that. One of them's still alive. Or, fuck, maybe he just can't die? The man's trying to pull himself up towards a wall-mounted rotary phone. He just keeps slipping back down the bloody wall over and... Ugh. So, we note... one notes the source seems to be coming from the backyard, or backfield. We're proceeding there now. And 3 says, Captain, shouldn't we... And 1 says, no, it's too risky. Anything we'd do would kill him anyway. 3 says, well, that might be for the best. Said, no, Point Alpha is our priority, Anna. Come on. So they go. It's a large secondary structure made of sheet metal, partially collapsed, covered in rust. It looks like a big garage of some kind. It's a tractor garage. Big-ass tire treads. And 1 says, so our source is a tractor? Well, one way to find out. We're going in. So you can hear them opening the this building, and you get a whoa and a holy fucking shit from the 2 Xi5 members. Site 9 says, squad report. What is it? What's inside the garage? 3 says, it's a machine, command, I think. It's like one of those spiderweb colonies that cover whole trees just with wires and pipes and stuff. It's all scraps and pieces around this big metal stalk. You know those globes they have at the Science Museum? Vanda whatever's, the ones that make your hair stand on end? It's like one of those, except it has a glass sphere at the center with 5 metal balls inside. They're all rolling around each other over and over. This is huge, command. It's nearly touching the ceiling. And Site 9 says, confirmed. Do you see a power supply? Do the cables go anywhere? And looking around, and 1 says, command, I got something. And Site 9 asks, a power supply? The negative. There's a small desk tucked into the corner. I see some diagrams, a few equations. It's all scribes, but it's all scribes. That might be scribbles. Command, I think this might be a journal. It's signed Seth MacArthur, and they confirm the homeowners did have a son named Seth. Might explain who this is. I followed the cables around the back of the garage. There's a kid here standing in front of a big transformer. He doesn't look much older than 16, and he keeps pressing buttons over and over. Red, orange, white. Over and over. Red, orange, white. Over. Damn it. The kid looks, I don't know, panicked. He's gritting his teeth. His forehead's all sweaty. I can't be sure, but I think maybe he's just trying to shut it down. And 1 says, or he might be keeping it running. Site 9 asks, what do you mean? 1 says, I've been skimming this journal. It's pretty clear the kid made this mess. January 5th, 2008. Nobody gets it. The world is wrong. Why can't they see? Why doesn't anyone listen to me? I'm the smartest kid in school. I skipped 4 grades. Even the teachers are stupid compared to me. And this keeps going. It's a lot of nonsense. I've read all the books, every physics textbook in the school library. It's all wrong. I know it. It's like we've skipped a number. And there's a footnote here. It's currently unknown if the subject is or was aware of Theta Prime, which is a link to way back to SCP-033. But they continue here. All our predictions and theories are based on a faulty premise. I know it. I don't know how, but when I look at these equations, I just know they're wrong. They're all wrong. It's all wrong. It says, I can build it. It's so simple. That's how I'll show them. Perpetual motion is possible. You just need the right machine. They just don't get it. It's not about creating motion. It's about creating a place where you change the constant of the universe. And, as he's reading this, 3 says, command, hang on. I think I might have something here. The kid keeps hitting the same 3 buttons, but for a split second before he goes back to red, his finger moves just a fraction closer to this little switch here. I think that might be the sequence. And Site 9 says, negative. 3, do not attempt to operate the device. And 1 says, October 15th, 2010. Oh shit, command, I think this is it. I worked through the night. It's nearly finished. I had to take apart nearly everything in the house. Dad was furious. He and Mom confronted me this morning. They said I'd been acting queer. They told me I need to stop skipping school. Dad knocked the microwave out of my hands. It was at that moment I realized he'd never understand. Some minds are too small. Thankfully, I had my multi-tool with me. One more problem solved. Jesus Christ. So yeah, our intrepid little bastard here stabbed his father, and now we're stuck in this loop where he can't die. That's something. 3 is red, white, orange to the switch. Red, white, orange to the switch. Red, white, orange to the switch. Yeah, Command, I really think this is the sequence. I can shut this thing down. Site 9 says -3. You're not to touch anything. Do you copy? 5-3. Do you copy? And 1 is reading this. Still, part 2. It's ready. The phone won't stop ringing in the house. I think my parents were supposed to help set up for that stupid festival. People must be wondering where they are. I need to hurry. None of it'll matter soon. No one will care about 2 dead hicks when I've redefined science. I've run through the first cycle, and it looks like the loop is stable. No energy in, no energy out, no energy lost. It's perfect. The diodes are rolling. Over and over, over and over, over and over. Site 9 says, 5-1. Damn it. Adamson, do you copy? We're scrubbing the mission. Return to evac now. And 1 says, Command, it's fine. I was just reading what he wrote. He just kept writing those words over and over, over and over, over and over. And 3 says, red, white, orange, switch. Red, white, orange, switch. Red, white, orange, switch. Site 9 says, squad, get out of there. 5-1, 5-3, wake up. 1 is saying over and over, over and over, over and over. 3 says, red, white, orange, switch. Red, white, orange, switch. Red, white, orange, switch. Fuck it. All audio is suddenly overtaken by a loud, disjointed static. Outpost 4382 reports decreased visual distortions around the town perimeter. The task force audio levels out, but a high-pitched whine is now heard in the background, steadily growing louder. 1 says, over and over, over and over. Something is wrong. The field is expanding. How can it be expanding? 3 says, red, orange. Hey, Command, this is 3. It looks like, yeah, the lights are starting to flicker off. I think it's shutting down. Even the kid seems to be waking up. We did it. Hey, kid, how in the hell? And Seth MacArthur now speaks. Says, wait, oh, fuck, wait, I need to... 3 says, whoa, kid, back away from the panel. You can hear 3 chambering around in her gun. 3 says, back away right now. Do not turn that fucking machine back on. And Seth says, I'm not. You don't understand. I have to... Oh, God, fuck. And the whine becomes overpowering. Garbled, panicked voices are barely audible. Site 9 asks, Squad, 5-1, do you copy? Adamson, Banks, do you copy? There's radio silence for 6 seconds. Seth MacArthur says, whew, okay, I think I got it. I just need to rebalance the... Oh. 3 says, what? What is it? Seth MacArthur says, I just figured out where all the energy goes. And a large explosion is heard and the signal cuts out. So this is May 18th. Our further little addenda here show... Our first addenda for May 18th shows a helicopter flyover of Hulwick shows a mushroom cloud originating from Point Alpha, our epicenter. No sound or shockwave was detected by 4382 outpost. Most of the MacArthur farm plot is enveloped in this mushroom cloud. The cloud appears to be suspended in mid-combustion, fire continuously rolling beneath the upper cloud rim. Our next addendum is 2 weeks later. It's June 3rd, and it says the Hulwick explosion is still ongoing. Outpost 4382 reports the conflagration is animated, but the explosion itself is still static in shape and size. While the anomaly has stopped expanding, the 8.7 square kilometer bubble shows no signs of collapse. All testing and exploration of Hulwick has been suspended until a solution can be devised. August 19th notes that Outpost 4382, during an autonomous sonar sweep of the interior, has detected a repeating communication signal from Captain Adamson. Our 2 Xi-5 members that were extracted have filed an official request to mount an extraction mission, but the Foundation has ruled that out due to their proximity to the explosion and the length of time within 4382. They have both been declared killed in action, and their request has been denied. And we have an addendum, our final addendum, back from May 18th at 6:12 p.m. 1 saying, Banks, stay there, and the sound of an explosion is heard, and this repeats 4 times. And that's where we end the article. So this has been one of the best examples I've seen of taking an existing trope in foundation lore or things you might see on the wiki, and putting a touch on it, a personal touch or personal twist to it, to make that scary, to bring to your attention the horror that must really occur in a situation like this. These loops and all of the ways that even trained agents are susceptible to it, and it's so well put together and done almost entirely through dialogue. The dialogue here is really good. Every bit of it is solid. This was probably my favorite piece of the week, just for, I think it's the combination of the helplessness that you, the reader, feels watching these experts, get mulched, basically, and that we have this sort of question mark at the end, like, I figured out where all the energy goes, and, from I'm reading this as maybe this is like all of the potential energy, or all the possible kinetic, I don't know, some sort of like kinetic energy being stored within this machine. And as the machine shuts down and the loop sort of stops, it's being converted, from potential energy to kinetic energy. And we have something that resembles, an explosion. The fact that the explosion is still ongoing 2 weeks later is really interesting to me. I don't know how exactly that would manifest, and it makes it hard to visualize how exactly that would work. Because an explosion is a pressure wave, right? Like, that's all an explosion really is. You might have fire or other stuff involved in it, but at the end of the day, the explosion itself is a pressure wave. So if it's radiating out sort of constantly and still ongoing, and that the fire itself is animated, I don't know how to, how that would look or what it would be like to be in the middle of an explosion that's sort of fixed at a point in time, yet not. That's more than my tiny, brain is really capable of putting together. Despite it, this was an outstanding piece. This was a very enthusiastic +1 for me. I didn't even use the word purple. Moving on. SCP-4578, titled A Good Guy with a Gun by Dave U. Fool. We have an object class of Keter and a threat level of yellow. The procedures indicate that the skip is kept in an externally reinforced humanoid containment cell in a bunker 2 kilometers below Site-59. The cell is to be regularly stocked with approved meals, books, and an Islamic prayer rug. At no point is the skip to come within 1 kilometer of the on-site nuclear warhead, nor is it to be made aware of it. Personnel assigned to its containment and upkeep are to be trained in American Sign Language and unarmed at all times. The skip is not to be issued orders unless they are phrased in the form of a polite request in sign language. No hostility, physical or otherwise, is to be displayed towards 4578. In the event of an emergency at Site-59, it is to be relocated to Area 4578, and should a -1 event occur, all personnel are advised to stand down until the event is over, then return the skip to safety at his own will. We are playing with some tropes that sound an awful lot like appeasing the skip and giving it what it wants, so you wonder how we're going to make that right. The skip is described as a 35-year-old man of West African descent named Gerard Sebastian Niang. Depending on how familiar you are with the stuff Dave U. Fool's been working on, you might have immediately known this was about to be really interesting. Due to the noise produced by -1 events, the skip is completely deaf. He is believed to be our reality's multiversal iteration of the leader of the Three Moons Initiative, who is named Gerard Sebastian Niang. It has the tattoo of 3 crescent moons on the back of his neck. This is hereafter -1, this tattoo. He regards tattooing as against his religion, but the tattoo generated on his body against his will when he turned 30 years old. When another living thing, we have a footnote here explaining we initially thought this was humans, but a wild dog attack cleared that up. When another living thing attempts to take hostile action, and this is also footnoted, as of Incident 518, direct orders to 4578 have been determined to be a form of hostile action, so that explains why we can't directly tell this guy what to do. So when another living thing attempts to take hostile action against SCP-4578, -1 transforms into a small pocket-dimensional gateway that deploys -2, a heavy caliber machine gun turret mounted on a robotic arm. Damn, I hate when that happens. The deployment process takes approximately 0.04 seconds from reaction to firing, and upon successful neutralization of the threat, -2 will retract into its pocket dimension. So you have some form of hostile action taken against President Niang. You are gunned down within 0.04 of a second. Got it. -2's destructive capabilities are not yet entirely understood, save for the following information gleaned from testing. It can fire up to 4,000 armor-piercing rounds per minute. The projectiles are 2 centimeters in diameter, that's huge, and made of an indestructible crystalline substance of likely extra-dimensional origin. The projectiles have a flesh-loosening effect on contact with organic tissue. That is to say, bonds between cells will separate, resulting in victims appearing to fall apart. That's gnarly. And lastly, the barrel of the gun is engraved with 3 Moons HDC 49SS El Deguelo. Warning, tampering with this device is a Class M damnable felony and will result in expedited oublietification. Glory to Jalakara. I googled oublietification. There was only one result. It's SCP-4578. Despite all of this, President Niang himself abhors violence, and manifestation of -2 has resulted in severe psychological trauma. We have a recovery log that says that they turned themselves in, basically. Their qualities were noticed by Foundation agents in the field and was transferred to Site 59 in 2017. And we have an addendum that indicates that on January 10th, 2017, after the establishment of President Niang's containment, SCP-2578 is cross-linked here. -D, the Foundation's primary contact with the 3 Moons Initiative. This is, it's not entirely necessary for this, but if you want to follow the whole story along, definitely recommend 2578. -D is our primary liaison with 3 Moons. They were contacted via email by Dr. Naismith for an explanation. The reply was as follows. 3 Moons apologizes. It appears that due to jurisdictional oversight and DNA similarities, this fellow shares some of the Eternal President's Secret Service protections. This weapon is designed to permanently incapacitate immortals, and its presence in Iteration 2L is offensive and inappropriate. 3 Moons will have this problem completely addressed within the hour. And within an hour, a meteorite landed on Site 59, about the size of a football. It did severe damage, and we inspect this meteorite, and we determine that it was a parcel addressed to 4578. It contained an index card reading compensation and a kilogram of diamonds. The skip's anomalous qualities remain unchanged. End article. I love this 3 Moon stuff, man. I had to include it because I've been wondering where we go from here in this very strange sort of world. And the thing that's really funny to me is nobody wants to get involved. We all want to see what Dave Fool will do next with this universe, and I know I most certainly don't want to stick my oar in and fuck everything up, because there really seems like we got a plan, and I think anything he's going to come up with is way better than anything I'm going to come up with. So this was a +1 for me. I love the universe building that we've been doing with 3 Moons, and this was a good little addition to the story so far, and I think would give us some legroom in further adventures down the line. Before we continue, AIS Mallard would like to plug SCP-4004, calling it an excellent critique of both American exceptionalism, but also of the Foundation as an organization, lampshading aspects of its organization in terms of real-world developments. Now, over the next 3 pieces, what I want to do is sort of discuss how much writers decide to leave up to the readers to piece together. I found it really interesting. I had 3 pieces that the writers made that judgment at different levels of how much we're given away in the story. So we're going to start with SCP-4686, titled Hugs for Everyone by Alara Ray. We have an object class of Euclid and an image that is heavily distorted. It's black and white, and what you can make out is a woman with one arm visible wrapped around something very large. Hard to say what exactly it is in the image. The caption says, "This is a possible image of -1 embracing an unknown requester. The original image source remains unknown." Okay. Our procedures are 2 sentences. Foundation web crawlers are to monitor 4686 and prevent civilian access to the website. Information regarding the skip outside the Foundation is to be acquired and removed. Oh, I guess I can't count to 3, huh? And civilians who have accessed 4686 are to be amnestized. So it is described as a website under the domain name www.hugsforeveryone. That's it. There is no extra dot. So IT Nerd Hat goes on here briefly. So in this case, Hugs for Everyone would be a top-level domain that would be run by a registry. And with that, we would have a huge amount of data available to us. And that is probably not what we want here, because that gives us a very lengthy paper trail to go into. I would suggest looking at how a couple of other website-based skips have done this recently. One you might want to look at is SCP-4484 Stream Savers that we covered back in week 33. So the website is described as being thematically colored in various alternating shades of blue and pink and has 3 input fields. One requests the user's full name, another requesting a type of hug, and the other requesting the user's response, respectively, alongside a request hug button. After the requester fills in the first 2 fields, an entity referred to as -1 will emerge and grow from the monitor of the requester's device and proceed to embrace the requester based on the type of hug requested. -1 is capable of manipulating its anatomy. It's consistently observed to be covered in fur, closely resembling that of a rabbit or dog, specifically an Angora rabbit or a Samoyed dog. We could probably condense that into resembling that of an Angora rabbit or a Samoyed dog, because when we say it looks like this and specifically this, we don't need to have that as 2 independent clauses. Let's put them together. -1 will continue embracing the requester for varying amounts of time, and at the end of the activity, it will wave one of its limbs before reintegrating its mass into the initial computer display. The website will then enter a refractory period, which I found to be an exceptionally odd choice of words, lasting from 24 to 145 hours, where it will be unavailable to take in requests. We could probably elaborate a little bit more on what happens when they attempt. We have a table here, but it does not necessarily. It still doesn't indicate what exactly happens if the website looks different or any of that stuff. Any attempt to apprehend -1 has failed, as it is capable of becoming incorporeal. The entity also affects any recording devices pointing at itself, distorting or corrupting any data that contains footage of itself within these devices. The operator and creator of 4686 remain unknown. We're doing a lot of this where we have we're answering a question before it was asked regarding visual evidence of the thing. I get it in the context of we have this image of a really distorted thing. So in this case, it may make more sense than others just because we want to use this image. But otherwise, just as general advice, be careful on explaining away why certain things, can or can't really be done ahead of time, because it takes your reader out of it as they stop to think of, well, what if you did this? What if you did this? That sort of stuff. So we go into an addendum where Foundation personnel have been, they have successfully accessed the skip's history of operations. So this is the recent month's history list transcribed into a table form, and apparently a more complete list is available. So this is the bulk of the length of the document. So this table is kind of split into 3 sections. The first section, things are mostly going as expected. People ask for different types of hugs. For example, a warm hug or a tight hug, and they get these hugs delivered to them, and there's responses. There are a couple, however, that don't go through. One person asks for a hug that can cure diseases, and the delivery of that hug was failed. And this happened twice. They went back 13 days later and tried again, and was again failed. The same person a little bit further down requested a comforting hug, and the result was failed out of range, which I would take to mean that the entity is incapable of hugging sufficiently to comfort this person that is dealing with some sort of disease. The second half of this is kind of broken up because we've got this thing that spans the whole table, and it says, the Foundation's latest attempt at shutting down SCP-4686. The website remained accessible, but -1 was not able to manifest. I would have loved to have seen more explanation of what exactly happened here, an operation and a thing down further below this table to explain what happened, because we leave a lot up to the reader to piece together what exactly that might mean. Over the next 11 days of testing, all all attempted hugs fail, and there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them in here, none of which were successfully delivered. And the following day, the skip returned to its normal operations, and where it's different here is now the requester is Hugs for Everyone, and they are trying to hug Anthony Miles, the one that has been consistently requesting hugs throughout this whole table, and they keep failing on the 31st. The first, second, third, the third twice, third 3 times, the fourth 3 times, the fifth, and they start by just saying failed, 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 and then the last 4 say failed out of range. Even just a regular hug for Anthony Miles fails out of range, and the response is sorry. We have 3 updates that say on the 4th, the skip's refractory period has been observed to be reduced by half. The reason for this remains unknown. On the 21st, the refractory period has been reduced to 24 hours. The reason for this remains unknown. And on September 2nd, the refractory period has been reduced to less than 24 hours. Multiple reports from witnesses have stated that -1, compared to its previous descriptions, has started to appear thinner than usual. The reason for this remains unknown. And article. So we leave a lot of piecing together what might be going on up to the reader. My understanding of this is that the Foundation in some way interfered with this entity, and it was not able to manifest through the screens. It couldn't do its thing, and in doing so, the thing somehow became weaker, and through its weakness, it found that it could no longer operate at all, and that's what we've got kind of going on over the course of this piece. But that wasn't immediately clear. That took a fair amount of like thinking and going back and forth in this to come to that conclusion, because we have like some red herrings here. Like at first I thought it was like this person that was wanted the hug that can cure diseases. Maybe they snuck in and got a regular hug, and the thing got infected with whatever, and then it couldn't do its thing anymore. We leave, I think, a little bit too much open to the reader here. This would have benefited from more explanation. One, why are we trying to shut it down in this way? That is not, to paraphrase, we're not destroy, destroy, destroy. So what does a takedown of this website look like? How do we go about this? And, can we do that in a way that stays true to sort of the Foundation's usual MOs? And then when we say it returned to its normal operations, how do we know? None of these after this point in time seem to work anyway. So I don't know. There were a few things in here that I think needed a little bit more polish than what's present, and I do think a little bit more time could be taken in making it just a little bit clearer what's going on. The final update, I think, is very beneficial for that, but we could describe how, perhaps 4686, the dash one rather, was, we were able to like physically restrain it in some way, and it was really struggling at first and then got weaker and weaker, and then we it escaped or whatever, and now we're seeing that it can't function anymore. That might be one way to go about it, but I think just a little bit of extra context of what a shutdown looks like and how that might have led to the state of things here at the end of it would have been good. That said, this is the high skip of the week right now at plus 79, and that does include my plus one. Moving on, SCP-4518, titled MBMBMBMBMBMBMBMBAM. We'll see what that's all about. So this is by CyberSquid, who I have seen provide some pretty good feedback as I've run deletions now and again. So I believe, let's see here. Yes, this is their first piece on the wiki, so congratulations. Our procedures here are pretty fascinating, actually. So instances of 4518. Oh, we have an image, by the way, of a photo of 4518, who appears to be white male, shaved head with sort of a goatee and beard going on, holding a microphone. Looks like a stand-up comedy performance of some sort. The caption reads, "This is a photo of 4518 taken at the start of its performance on the 17th of April in 2011. So instances of 4518. We have a guy that is apparently 4518, and instances of, so we're dealing with more than one person. They are contained in two Foundation facilities: Adapted Storage Facility 03, a converted pub located in Chicago, and Adapted Storage Facility 04, a converted storage area located in Site 17. Here's where it gets interesting. No monitoring of the interior of either of these facilities is to be carried out. Contact with 4518 instances is prohibited." So we're kind of directly contradicting what we would typically do here. ASF 03 and 04 both utilize sealed antechambers so that 4518 instances can be supplied with material required to sustain life and for biological matter to be removed monthly. See Addendum 00 for more information. While ensuring that Foundation personnel do not come into contact with 4518. So we've got sort of a man trap set up at both sites to provide material required to sustain life and for biological matter to be removed monthly. We're left, that's pretty vague, and it's like you hope we have a payoff for that and that it's not just left so vague that the reader can't tell what the hell's going on. So the description here is only 2 paragraphs. It's an anomalous group of humans that are visually identical, approximately 30-year-old white males. Attempting to count the number of instances causes the number of instances present to increase, with newly appearing instances wearing the same clothing as one of the counted instances. These can cause the number of instances present to increase by counting themselves, including when only one is currently present. And this effect also occurs when instances are counted over live video and audio feeds. So that's an interesting thing. Observing them, counting them in some way increases the number of them. So that would be why our observation of them is prohibited. And I would wonder if there's something where we could utilize an AI, robots, or something along those lines that could simply go handle things as a workaround here. We have a discovery log, April 17th, 8 p.m. One instance was due to perform a stand-up routine in Chicago at what is now Adapted Storage Facility 03. This facility had a maximum capacity, including staff and performers, of 80 people. At the beginning of its performance, it's believed the venue contained about 65 people. So we have a log here, a chronology going from 8 p.m. to 11:21, and this is really interesting stuff. The first instance walked on stage to begin their performance. The bartender went to prepare some water, which caused the first duplication. This was rapidly followed by multiple duplications as the audience saw what was happening. Like, oh, now there's 2 of them. Oh, now there's 3 of them. Oh, now there's 4 of them. You can see how that would get out of hand very quickly if this did behave this way. 3 minutes pass and the venue is experiencing severe overcrowding, which led to the venue owner contacting the police to clear out the venue. 9 minutes later, the first police car has arrived on scene and a brawl had broken out as the instances refused to abandon their routine. That's really strange to me. I feel like there would have been, because we don't really ever go in and personalize this guy. We don't give him any character in any real way. I would love to see this guy be just as freaked out about this as anyone else, even having these guys like fight themselves. 2 minutes later, the police request backup as they're trying to arrest all these guys, and they're just getting angrier and more of them are manifesting. 6 minutes later, a small fire breaks out. You could hear the instances chanting. 10 minutes pass, and a Foundation agent embedded in Chicago PD heard what had happened on the scanner and requested the assistance of Iota 10 damn feds to handle the situation. I don't know if damn feds is the right MTF to bring into this, only because they have such a track record of dealing more with governmental things, and there are probably more purpose-built MTFs for the job if you don't want to roll your own. In any event, I-10 arrives on scene to help handle the situation. Multiple instances had relocated out to the street due to overcrowding. 2 minutes later, they request a bunch of transport vans to move the instances back to Site 17 and closes off the block that the venue is located on to prevent civilians from interfering and allow space. 7 minutes later, vans begin to arrive, and they are shepherded instances into vans in groups of 30. 11 minutes pass, and Site 17 Overwatch has become concerned about the number of instances that require containment after I-10 requested additional transport. The Site 17 director gets involved, an emergency meeting is convened to try and figure out how to contain the situation, and a further 3-block radius is sealed off to keep the instances contained. 7 minutes later, the first transport van carrying the 4518 instances has arrived, and it became clear the 40 temporary holding cells prepared in advance were not sufficient for holding all of the instances just from the first van. Remember, they came in sets of 30, and I imagine we've got like a clown car thing going on by the time they arrive. So at 9:30, the emergency meeting made the decision to seal the venue and prevent anyone inside from leaving. A web crawler is involved to locate images and remove them. At 9:42, the entrances to the venue were sealed with concrete blocks with an unknown number of police and patrons still inside. We have a footnote here saying work was done to replace these concrete blocks with a permanent entrance structure once the situation had been resolved. Resolved is an interesting word. That's a word you certainly could use. I don't know if it's the right word, but it doesn't sound resolved to me. A minute later, an EC meeting, the ethics committee, gets involved to determine whether it's acceptable for these instances remaining to be terminated due to the difficulty in transporting them to secondary containment facilities. 17 minutes later, this meeting's still going on. Vans that potentially contained these instances were driven into Site 17 and sealed in. 11 minutes pass. The ethics committee approves termination of uncontained instances. 4 minutes later, agents begin to amnestize witnesses, including members of the police. And at 11:21, the final uncontained instances were terminated. So this was a really well put together log, I think. We leave a little bit of mystery in here. We let the reader come to some conclusions. We give them numbers, and then when the numbers don't match up, you go, oh shit, yeah, this is still like going on. It lets you kind of imagine what that situation would have been like. So let's continue here. Following these events, a Foundation misinformation campaign was run to spread news. There was a bar fight that got out of hand. The property damage and the resulting mess revealed the presence of asbestos, so we sealed off the venue. And our addendum 00 is as I read in the beginning. Approximately 9,400 kilograms of biological matter was required to be disposed of from within the two sites, and the current supply levels of both were insufficient to handle the populations being contained there, so those supplies were doubled. The biological matter was deemed safe to be incinerated, and it's expected that some of this will continue to be produced from both sites. As a result, a schedule to allow for monthly incinerations of this material will be set up. Incineration is done at 1500 C for at least 4 hours. The ashes must be passed through a grinder to ensure none of the remains are identifiable. End article. So we are left to piece together some things on our own. Biological matter was intentionally vague. You could hear that and think this is waste. This is just biohazardous waste. No, I don't think that's what this is. I think these are corpses, because we are talking about mass cremation of corpses that are expiring due to any number of terrible reasons could be going on here. It could be these sealed facilities are so full of people that they simply suffocate due to there being so many people so close, and that's how people die in big crowds. That's crowd crush. If you hear about it, people will become so compressed that their lungs cannot expand, and what a way to go. This was, I thought, a really good balance of letting the reader piece together the missing pieces, and the result has greater impact because not only does the reader get a little rush, a little reward center activation for piecing it together, that gets chained with, oh no, that means, oh shit, and having that moment as well. So altogether, outstanding first entry. I find this to be quite underrated right now at plus 31. Now, going back to the title, they mention in the comments, the author does, something about MBMBAM, and I intentionally did not go look that up, because they said that, that was an inspiration of theirs towards this, and that's okay. We didn't, whatever it was, I don't think it's really necessary for this to still land and have the impact that it has. But without that background knowledge, perhaps there's a little more impact that could be, that could land for the reader. And I would encourage, always, when you are a big fan of something and you want to bring their stuff into the SCP universe, make sure you're linking that so people actually know and can find out what they're discussing. Now, in this case, it is apparently a podcast called My Brother, and Me, so all of the MBs would be, they've got more and more brothers, and that's kind of our punchline, and it is sort of a comedy podcast, so it all kind of makes sense in this universe, but that's the sort of thing where if that's fine to you as a piece to build off of from inspiration, that's great, and not knowing about it did not hurt my enjoyment of the piece. So that's a great way to walk that particular line. So well done, +1 from me. Now, last but not least, SCP-4756, titled A Reborn Man by Edna Granbo, SCP Wiki Junior Staff and Chat Half Operator. We have an object class of safe and 1 sentence worth of procedures indicating that the skip has been sealed within -1. Steel beams are to be bolted to the lid of -1 and the floor of its containment chamber. So steel beams bolted to the lid. We're keeping this thing contained within its own -1, whatever that may be. Now, the skip is described as currently a large humanoid entity. Multiple autopsies have shown that the skip only has 2 fully functioning organs, the heart and the brain. Other organs are either non-functioning, heavily damaged, or missing. Autopsy seems like a strange word here because autopsies are exclusively done post-mortem, and it sounds like this thing is still alive despite its lack of organs. It could be that it, cycles between being alive and dead, and that's something that we might have to put in front of the word autopsies before it to have that really make sense. It continues that while animate, the skip will attempt to consume any and all human tissues it comes into contact with. Upon discovery, it was a mummified 7-month-old fetus, but has since developed into multiple entities over the course of 13 years, and that is further elaborated on in an addendum. -1 is described as a stone coffin with multiple thaumaturgical symbols engraved into it. The skip will heal wounds at a normal rate while stored within -1. However, it will rapidly regenerate damaged tissues in a matter of 4 to 5 hours while not stored within it. We have a footnote there explaining that this regeneration will often result in tumorous growths, especially within heart and brain tissues, and that is a link to 4758, which does explore the same subject matter here. The -1 has no anomalous properties outside of its relationship with the skip, and as of January 12, 2012, a small leather-bound journal has been discovered in a hidden compartment on the inside of -1, and this is in Addendum 2. That's it. Everything else from here on is addenda. So the first one is just the appearance over time. It was a 7-month-old fetus from December 1st, 2006 to November 8th, 2011, and so almost 5 years. And then this within a month, we have a month here. Well, here's the thing: do we have a month unaccounted for, or are we going in sort of that European date format? I don't know, because we didn't use an ISO standard. Let's assume a month passed, because we're, for the most part in America, I'm going to read this in the conventional format, which is to say that from November 8th to December 8th, nothing happened. And then it became a child suffering from malnourishment. And we note the skip was able to freely exit and enter the coffin, but it expressed pain while outside of it. And it stayed in this malnourished child state for about 3 years, and then became an underweight adult, where it demonstrated the ability to move in a more fluid manner than it was previously able, and often had periods where it had symptoms of a panic attack or depression. And this state existed for about 2 years, up till now, where it became a disproportionately large muscular humanoid, extremely hostile to all forms of human life. Now, having seen this table, I am fairly sure we're doing this in a day, month, year format. And so from one day to the next, we go through these transitions, these stages. We don't really explain at all what this process looks like. If it's within the coffin, which we would assume, that should be elaborated on, because it's kind of jarring that it would go, it's, a fetus and then a child, and we don't really elaborate on how old a child it is. A child is, age 0 to, 18, basically. So I might assume that it's something like 4 or 5 years old, but that's me pulling it out of my ass. I have no idea if that's what the author intended. Anyway, so we go from this to the second addendum. It is a set of journal entries, and this is the actual narrative of the story. It begins in entry 1 saying, "After much traveling, I arrived in a small camp in the most secluded part of the woods. There's maybe 40 people here, each adorned with strange tattoos and body paint, all except for Father, that is, and that's with a capital F. The only markings Father has are that of grotesque scars going across the undersides of his forearms. When I asked why he only has those scars, I only got a one-word answer: rebirth. I'll stay here for as long as I need to and not a day longer. I know it's likely they don't actually possess the ability to cure me, but I can't risk missing out on being there for my family. I need to stay healthy for my new family. I need to do this for them." So we have a motivation by our character here. The second entry notes that Father approached me while I was studying Latin. I've made very little progress on learning Latin, only studying when Father forces me to. Father said I needed to join the others in prayer, so I went to the center of the camp to join the others. They're all chanting something in Latin: "Flesh of new blank, the grand blank, Blessed are we for receiving your gift. And after this, everyone was given a scrap of raw meat. I was told to eat it, for if I didn't, the prayer would be for naught. One small bite of that bloody meat, one small bite, and I threw up. There was something about that meat that every fiber of my being rejected. Hours after, I was still vomiting. Father said that this needed to be fixed and that I was learning Latin too slow for what was required of me. So we can probably make some assumptions here. I certainly did at this point. By the third entry, I found the source of the meat last night. The very thought of what it was disturbs me to my core. They took his arm and his jaw, but he was still alive for some God-forsaken reason. I saw the look of desperation in his eyes. He was praying to every god he knew for me to put him out of his misery. Before I could even think of what to do, Father found me. He gave me a lecture on how much I've disappointed him. I don't care about what this madman wanted from me anymore. Even if Father's group could help me, I refuse the very thought of it. When morning breaks, I shall leave this camp and return to my wife. We have 5 more of these entries, so you might take that to mean that didn't work out quite as planned, and you'd be right. Entry 4, today is the day that my punishment is over. Chained to... it says chained to thee a wall. We need to fix that. Given nothing but human meat. Nothing to do but to read the holy scripts and learn Latin. For months, this was all I knew. Father has shown me the light, and for that I am grateful. And then at the bottom of this, it says info hazard redacted. We go to entry 5. Father told me of what he wants to do. I shall serve my purpose to him, and I shall serve it well. I shall live for Father. I shall become as Father wanted me to. Info hazard redacted. I know the rites I must do. Info hazard redacted. It says that 3 times. Once these rites have been committed, I will be ready for the ritual. We're leaning a little on this info hazard redacted, and it continues. Into entry 6, Father has told me of the components I need: a stone coffin, an open fire, info hazard redacted, and my child, info hazard redacted. The reason I wanted to stay alive is the one I must, info hazard redacted. No, I must forget these thoughts. I shall not fail, Father. I am his chosen. I will, info hazard redacted. Only 3 days are left until the ritual must begin. We are sort of going about this where we are redacting things in this way that we're saying they're info hazardous, but we're kind of just doing it to make the reader fill in the blanks. But we're getting so to the point here that it's hard for it to really land, I think, in the way that it's intended. We go to entry 7. I've done it. The final component of the ritual is in my hands, but it comes at the cost of the only woman I've loved. It all happened so fast, I felt something primal awaken inside of me. One moment I was talking to her, the next I had grabbed a knife from the kitchen, I tackled her to the ground, and I forced the knife through her ribs over and over again. Info hazard redacted twice. It wasn't until almost an hour had passed I had stopped. I carefully cut into her stomach and tore it open. I saw him there. His skin was a dark gray. He died long before I finished. I carefully set him on the table and did what I had to fulfill my hunger. Info hazard redacted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I didn't stop until all that was left was bone. Info hazard redacted. I took him and wrapped him in what was left of his mother's dress. I took him to the ritual site. I had to prepare him before the ritual can begin. Gnarly. So the final entry, entry 8, has info hazard redacted 5 times, the word rebirth, and we end the article there. So we need to have a discussion here on Crazy to Death. Crazy to Death doesn't necessarily manifest as the person actually dying, but one thing that is a hallmark of it to me is when we get really into these, gratuitous redactions and expungements in lieu of, or as like a simple substitution for little words in the story. Info hazards are a pretty specific thing, and if that's what we want to go with, I feel like if we want to show that we're raising the stakes, if we want to increase the significance of these info hazards, there are ways to go about it without just using more and more of them. You can use something like a class blank info hazard in an early entry and increase it as you go through these, and through the end result here, perhaps something where we had to enact some protocol to reestablish baseline reality, something like that. You can do that kind of stuff and have it, I think, look more polished and more in how the modern wiki tends to operate than I think what we have here. The story itself is left very much it's very much laid out. Despite all those redactions, you can follow exactly what's gone on in the story. You don't have to reason out much of anything. That this guy is dying, he has a kid on the way. Wait, is this Breaking Bad? No, it's not quite Breaking Bad. But willing to do terrible things, and then finds out, thinks that he can get help, doesn't really get the help he was expecting to get, and this rebirth is going to come at the cost of the child that he was trying to stay alive for in the first place. So we have a tag down here, and these tags are always out of character, if you will. They're not considered part of the story, but we have Sarkic as one of the tags here, and if that is what we're doing, and I don't think anybody's argued the point, we probably needed some further linking along those lines. I don't think it's sufficient simply to link to another article to get there. I think there does need to be some mention, link them to a GOI, come right out and do it. That said, so the piece is still good. It tells a very straightforward story. I do think I might like to see a slightly different formatting of this addendum, just for the sake of immersion. I think there are better ways to go about this to make this look more like our capturing of this deranged shit in this diary. I like to design stuff, if all other things are equal, to be such that if a perfect stranger that had never seen the wiki in their life happened to stumble upon mine as the very first thing, it would not be remotely obvious that they were reading a work of fiction. I want it to all look very put together in a way that they have stumbled upon some incredibly classified information. And I don't think this set of the tab view and the tabs is that might be that, like, doing the tab view might be the way to go, but something about just how it's put together with just little the tabs say entry 1, entry 2, and the words are spelled out. I think I would do something a little different there, just to polish it up just a touch. The object class of safe is it's okay for now. We're seeing this, the stakes keep rising. This dude's all big and swole now, and that's the state of things for the last 3 years, but our precedent has shown something else is probably about to happen. Should we be making plans? Like, we've got these steel beams, but maybe it turns into one of those big fuckers from Left 4 Dead. All that said, there's more good than bad in this piece, for sure. This was a good, straightforward narrative that needs a little bit of polish to, I think, get to its full potential, and that's borne out in the ratings right now, but still enough for me to give this a +1. All right. Hey, let's check voicemails, dude.
Hey, this is Maurice again. I'm out back with the truck. This truck is making an awful lot of noise back here. I was hoping you guys could take delivery. Yeah, I'm out back. This package is marked for, Lord Explosion. Something on here about a daycare. I'm gonna back my truck up and hope you get this voicemail. If I don't make it, tell my wife I died as I lived. Exploding.
Thanks, Maurice. Lord Explosion's Pyrotechnic Playground and Daycare is not liable for exploding trucks. Moving on to the mailbag. Deniaku says, are there any recurring themes you tend to see among works of new writers, be they positive or negative? And if so, do you have any pointers for would-be new authors of the wiki? Yeah, the advice would be to watch new stuff. uh, we still see a lot of stuff get submitted that is straight out of series one in ways that are not to their benefit now. You can look on any given day, just kind of keep an eye on the most recently created or the lowest rated pages tabs, and see stuff that plenty of stuff that's still missing spelling, punctuation, and grammar, just on a basic level. But beyond it, you've got stories that are, they're stories that are not. They're basically just scary guy kills everybody, give him what he wants, because we apparently have no experience dealing with scary guys. And you still see a lot of that stuff. I will also say that lately I've seen a lot of writers that are trying to use all the crayons in the box, and I understand that. Using new themes, new components, new little, polished looking graphical pieces. But sometimes those things don't really buy you much. I see every one of those little mechanical additions to a piece, the little restricted enter login and password field, blah, blah, blah. Each one of those is, you've got to make the piece work that much harder to justify the inclusion of them. And that's me. Maybe that's my own quirk with it. But I see each of those as plot devices that we are intentionally putting more information behind a user interaction. We are intentionally increasing the suspense. We're withholding information from them until they get involved. And I think when you do that, the payoff needs to justify it. So, be aware that there's nothing wrong with using none of that stuff and just going for it, writing a story, make this, that's what people are there for. It's not a lot of people just in it for the new themes or the new components or any of that stuff. They want to be entertained. They want to be, freaked out, scared, whatever. Keep that as, job one. That's your goal. That's what they're entrusting you with as a writer, to get after them mentally, and keep that as the thing that drives your decisions, less so than the polisher wanting to look like what you've seen other people do. If you are a brand new writer and you're trying to get your first piece put together, make use of the resources that are available. Use the forums, and don't just use them. Read what other people are doing, and see what sort of questions other users and staff members are asking them to help clarify their piece. It's really not enough anymore to have a thing that does a thing or a scary guy. People are looking for stories. And above all, my advice is to take your time. Nobody's going to remember if you got a piece knocked out in a day. Not a soul. Plenty of people will remember if you chucked 4 or 5 articles up with a day's thought apiece, and they all get sent to deletion, and you maybe get your membership revoked. And a lot more people will remember if your first piece knocked it out of the park. So use all of the resources we have available for new writers. Every one of them. There's no restrictions placed upon you as a first timer to use the forums, to use the chat, to use the Critters chat. All those things are available to you, and your persistence in soliciting the feedback and the critique will be your biggest asset in getting a quality piece up on the wiki. AIS Mallard asks, what kind of tales do you find yourself attracted to? And I thought about this for a bit, and the closest I could come up with was, I can tell you which kind of tales I'm not attracted to. I'm not a big fan of stuff that is super dialogue heavy, that it's just as though you were reading a piece from a novel, like an excerpt from a short story where it's very dialogue heavy, and it's these two parties that in the beginning I have no reason to care about either of them. There's no buy-in on my part required to start reading, and these tales tend to be in medias res. We tend to be right in the middle of the story as it's going on, so I'm given no reason to sympathize or empathize or support these characters. I'm normally not given enough backstory for it to fully make sense. And then, we get to a climax or a resolution before I really, had a chance to know the guy. So a lot of stuff that I like when we're looking just in Tales, and I'm going to leave GOI formats out of this, is stuff that can alleviate that, introduce all those little elements of storytelling, treat these as standalone stories that they are, and give me a reason to get initially invested. Give me something about them in a way that I'm like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. Now, like, I want to see where we go from here. I feel like I wasn't necessarily the best at that in some of my own pieces, which I've tended to start in medias res, and I didn't thoroughly lay out who my characters were or why you should be cheering for them to go get their desired outcome. So it's difficult. I think tale writing it's as difficult as writing a skip in different ways, because for one, the tale crowd is smaller. Getting a highly rated tale is like getting plus 50 on a tale is a huge accomplishment. Getting plus 50 on a skip is, I would say, slightly easier to do than a tale. So, which ones am I attracted to? Ones that get me hooked early, and that build up to payoff is still within a reasonable amount, because the tales are also where you've got very few restrictions on length as well. So hook me early and build it up and pay it off in a reasonable amount of time, and I'm probably going to recommend it. Crashington asks, and by the way, want to give well wishes to Crashington and farewell to his appendix, as they have recently parted ways, and Crashington is still recuperating from that, so hope you're doing okay. He asks, what is your favorite trope on the wiki which is overdone but you still can't get enough of, kind of like a guilty pleasure? And I had to think about this one too for a while, and upon some deliberation, I decided the answer was right in front of me. I'm a technobabble fan, and I'm a fan of the big, epic-sounding operation names and all of that stuff. Like, they don't really add a damn thing to the story, if we're being honest, but they give you little things that you remember, and you associate them with a piece. So, I've joked, with Rounder House and a couple of the others that are particularly guilty of this, because I think they're like me. It's like, it's fun. Like, why not just add that little bit of personality to it? Even if the Foundation, they may or may not really behave that way, but you've got that license as a writer that if you want to say, they're going to behave more like a military, where their operations have names attached to them. So Operation Caesar's Eagle and that sort of goofy thing. That I have a J in the incubator that kind of plays on that. A couple of them actually, because they're fun. It is a guilty pleasure because it's fluff at the end of the day. But it is also, if you're consistent in it, it's universe building. It is the sort of thing, it's like how all of the mobile task forces have nicknames attached to them. They're a fun little way to give a little bit of personality to a unit that, only exists really as a little vehicle to move the story along. They're just exposition or a new point of view to hand the story off to. So that's sometimes your very best chance at giving them personality. The one we were talking about today with T. Rutherford's piece, Newton's Bullies. You can do a lot of fun things just in the opportunities you have to put some little technobabble in, or give a goofy little epic name to things. And that can be the sort of thing that somebody will take that and remember it, and that's just one more little piece to remember your article by. And with that, we're out of here. I've been spending most of my free time doing wiki stuff lately. I've been working on the next iteration of the Scuttle SCP Wiki backup site. Working on a bunch of new stuff, using all the crayons in the box over at Amazon Web Services to try and build new tools, not just for backing up the wiki, but for people to interact with it. If there is sufficient interest by the right folks, I might do a little special on that, on what new architecture might look like in an IT perspective for doing a task like this. But I suspect that's a fairly focus-targeted sort of thing, so perhaps not. But just the same, that's what I've been working on lately, to the dismay of people that may be waiting on bonus content. So I'm going to try and do better to balance that stuff out, but at the same time, I'm like almost done with the core of what I want this Scuttle revamp to be. So what I'll probably just do is get that knocked out and then try and work on some of this bonus content that's backlogged a little bit. So we'll see. Bear with me as I try and balance what's best for the wiki with what is due to the patrons and the listeners. In any event, I will see you probably Friday for week 41. Keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.